Good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's event titled Surfing Green Policies, Opportunities for Sustainable Business, organized by the European Environmental Bureau and the European Consumer Organization BEUC. My name is Ana Gumbau. I am a climate and energy journalist in Brussels, and I'll have the pleasure to be moderating this discussion in which we're going to be talking all about the different green policies that have been enacted in the past months as part of the European Green Deal that will have an impact on businesses and on sustainable products. Most importantly, we're going to be zooming in on the opportunities that this legislation brings for businesses, smaller and bigger businesses. So we're going to be starting with some welcoming words from our hosts. Then we'll have a first panel discussion in which we'll be diving deeper into the different policies, what each one of them is about, what is needed for businesses to be implementing them, and how the European Commission aims to support them. And the second one will be looking into industry and consumers. So we're going to be seeing some real examples on how businesses are implementing sustainable product policies, what are the obstacles, but also most importantly, again, what are the opportunities, how we can overcome them, and also bring the consumer perspective into this webinar. You'll be able to ask questions throughout the discussion. We are going to be sure to have time to answer as many of them as possible. Please add any questions that you would like in the Q&A function here on Zoom, and we will try to take as many of them as possible. Enough for me for now. I would like now to give the floor to the incoming Director General of BEUC as of June, Agustin Reyna, to kick us off. Agustin, welcome.
Thank you very much, Anna, and hi, everyone. I'm very, very excited to be part of this conversation with all of you. There are so many questions that need to be addressed. Are green policies always negative for companies? Can they bring benefits for consumers as well as new business opportunities? And the reality is that there is a growing narrative that green policies will not be popular anymore, that people have enough of them, that they limit their choices, and that they will negatively affect our competitiveness in Europe. I must say that BEUC and consumer organizations disagree with this narrative. Many consumers really want to live more sustainably. There is a demand for greener products and services. We know that, and we know it through the evidence and surveys that our members have been conducting in many European countries. So, for example, we did a survey last year, which showed that 80% of respondents say that they want to make an effort to live in a more environmentally friendly way. And 60% say that they look out for environmental information when deciding what to buy. So people really want to make a change. But let's be frank, in practice, it is hard. It is hard to be sustainable consumers where your expectation matches the reality. People face a lot of challenges when trying to make greener choices. For example, because of green claims on products or services, which are simply unclear or misleading. Our survey also showed that people are confused about green advertising. They think that there are simply too many green claims and labels out there. And green claims doesn't make a product unique anymore, but then end up adding more confusion to the jungle of green claims. And this is certainly not good for consumers and not good for the environment, because consumers end up losing trust in this type of claims that should be there actually to help consumers make more sustainable choices. For BEUC and our members, we are working hard to make easier for consumers to choose products that are truly more sustainable. For example, we carry out enforcement actions in the area of greenwashing to ensure that those who pretend to be green while in reality they are not, they don't get away with it. We also have a long history in contributing to the EU Ecolabel, the EU's own sustainability label, which stands out from many other green labels as a true benchmark for inclusive, transparent governance and high trustworthiness. It is encouraging to see the progress that the EU has achieved during the last 5 years to make production and consumption more sustainable. We have a lot of new legislation in this area to make sure that all products sold in the EU meet a minimum level of green requirements, to provide people with more detailed and clear information about product sustainability characteristics, and to fight greenwashing. Even when these rules need to be implemented, and it's something that needs to be followed very closely, there are still questions that remain. And that brings us closer to the consumer core demand. How do we make the sustainable choice the easy choice for consumers? Just a final word. New legislation is often associated with more burdens for consumers. But today, we really want to show that there are also opportunities for those who are genuine about the green efforts. We will also hear how the EU Ecolabel can make it easy for companies to be prepared for these new rules. And it's really good to see so many of you interested in this topic, and that you have joined us today to learn more and to be part of this conversation. So once again, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and have an excellent and productive discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Agustin, for these welcoming words. I've noted two very important figures. The first one being that in this survey, 80% of respondents said that they wanted to make an effort for more sustainable choices, and that 60% look for environmental information on their products. So there is clearly an interest there. So how can the policies that have been agreed in the past months make the business case for sustainable products? As I just mentioned, in this first panel discussion, we'll be diving deep into the policies that have been enacted and that are going to affect businesses all across Europe. And I'm delighted to welcome the speakers that will join us right now, starting with Emmanuelle Maire. She's the head of circular economy, sustainable production and consumption at the European Commission's Directorate General for Environment. Welcome, Emmanuelle.
Good afternoon.
And also with us is coming from the Directorate General for Justice and Consumers at the European Commission, Benedicte van Ommerlingen. Welcome, Benedicte.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all.
Good afternoon. We were also hoping that we would be joined today by a member of the European Parliament, Cyrus Engerer, the rapporteur of the Green Claims Directive. Unfortunately, due to a last-minute issue, he wasn't able to join us. But bear with us, because with Emmanuelle and Benedicte, you're going to be in very good hands today. So I would like to start with the first reflection from each one of you about the importance of having agreed such important piece of legislation in the field of sustainable products, but also sustainable consumption, and what these different pieces of the puzzle are aiming to achieve. And I would like to start with you, Emmanuelle, if you could tell us a little bit about some of these files that have been agreed, for instance, the Green Claims Directive, and also if you can introduce us to other tools. We've talked about this eco-design for sustainable products regulation, the EU Ecolabel, what are all these different pieces of the puzzle, and why are they all so relevant?
Very good. Yes, with pleasure. Indeed, in the context of the Circular Economy Action Plan back in 2020, but also in the consumer empowerment, we decided to have really a good picture of the situation on circular economy that would not focus on waste policy only, and how to transform our waste into new materials so that we don't always rely on virgin material, but we also looked at sustainable consumption and production in the first place. And in that context, we decided to reinforce the legislation on sustainable products. And the idea and the reality very soon was to upgrade an existing piece of legislation, which is called the eco-design directive. And consumers know it because when they buy, for example, a washing machine, they very often can decide on the basis of the energy efficiency of that washing machine, and they can choose, the greenest product on the market in terms of energy efficiency. What consumers do not always see is that only the more efficient washing machines are placed on the European Union market. And there is a whole collection of washing machines, because they don't meet these targets, that cannot access one of the biggest markets in the world, because we are 450 million citizens. So we have used the eco-design legislation, and we built on it, and we said, okay, we need to look beyond energy efficiency so that we can cover different types of environmental impacts. And we will look also beyond energy-related products so that we could cover as well, like textiles. And when we presented our proposal to the European Parliament and to the Council, they have been in favor, and they have transformed now this proposal into a new regulation. This will give us the possibility in the years to come to make sure that we can have specific legislation, for example, on textiles, but maybe other products which matter for consumers, but also for the environment, always with the same approach to say, look, the unsustainable products will not be able to be sold on the European market, and we will reinforce the consumer information and use the digital tools of the day, the so-called digital product passport. So this eco-design for sustainable products regulation is a very, very powerful tool to make sure that consumers are empowered, but also that the more sustainable business and circular business can get an advantage, and that competition applies, with a high standard. So this is for the eco-design for sustainable products. And again, the foundation are now laid down, and we will approach the implementation with the priority products, which will have to be decided in the coming year. Now, we also complemented this sustainable product approach through two other pieces of legislation, the consumer empowerment legislation, and Bénédicte knows all about it, so I will leave it to her to tell you a bit more, but also through the so-called Green Claim Directive. And there, what we're trying to do is to tackle the voluntary claims which are made by businesses towards consumers, to make sure that these claims are really backed up by proper scientific evidence, that these are clearly communicated to the consumers, and that they are checked before being brought to the attention of the consumer. And this is good for the consumers, good for the environment, but also good for businesses. Because the situation today is that some businesses are doing a good job in backing their claims, and some others are applying a less stringent standards, or even do not justify their green claims. And this creates also a problem of level playing field across the European Union. So in short, I would say we have three key pieces of legislation which have been enacted and are being enacted in this political mandate.
Thank you very much, Emmanuelle, for giving this overview. You've talked about the questions around empowering consumers, and this is when Benedicte comes in. If you can talk to us about all the different initiatives that are meant to be focusing on sustainable consumption, for instance, the Empowering Consumers Initiative. We also discussed privately, for instance, the right to repair. What are some other pieces of legislation and initiatives that businesses need to keep an eye on?
Sure, no, thanks, Anna. First of all, I want to thank BEUC and the European Environmental Bureau for inviting me to speak today. I'm very glad to be here. So Emmanuelle has described very well the context and some of the initiative, and I will indeed concentrate on maybe 2 additional initiatives that also aim to foster a sustainable consumption and empower the consumer to be active in the green transition. So the directive on empowering consumer for the green transition, and also the directive on common rules promoting the repair of goods. So first of all, on the empowering consumer for the green transition directive, as indicated by Agustin earlier, we know that in general, consumers in the EU are willing to contribute to a greener and more circular economy, but that they are facing obstacles. We have clearly seen from our impact assessment that they lack clear information at the point of sale to actually be able to choose the most durable products. And they also face unfair commercial practice, greenwashing, also mentioned by Emmanuelle, and early obsolescence. And so from the business perspective, that what we see is that greenwashing and early obsolescence are not fair actually towards companies who are truly doing the effort to become more sustainable. In addition, greenwashing by one company also decreased consumer trust towards other companies, and this was clearly shown by a BEUC recent survey. And so in order to tackle this issue, the Empowering Consumer for the Green Transition Directive will do 2 different things. First, it will amend the existing Consumer Rights Directive to ensure that consumers are provided with better information at the point of sale, so both online and offline, on the durability and repairability. So for example, how long a product will last, how long software update will be provided, and if the good can be easily repaired. And this is when the producer makes this information available to the trader, the seller. And for instance, one example of new measure is that producer willing to offer commercial guarantee of durability on a specific product to consumer will be able to gain visibility by using a new EU harmonized label when it respects a certain condition. And so this label will show the period during which the good will benefit for such guarantee and will be easily recognizable for consumer, so that consumer will be able to identify which are the goods that will last for a longer period of time. And so this really enables durable products to stand out on the EU market, and so producer of good quality like really to stand out and on the EU market. So I really encourage those of you, like when it will be available to use this harmonized label. The Commission has been tasked by the co-legislator to actually design this new label. So we would be really happy also to receive your input to make sure that it works for you and the consumers. So secondly, the new directive will also introduce more specific rules and prohibition in the Unfair Commercial Practice Directive, including in this so-called blacklist of commercial practice, meaning that they are prohibited under all circumstances to fight greenwashing and early obsolescence. And so regarding greenwashing, this general rule will be complemented by the Green Claims Directive Emmanuelle just talked about. To give you one concrete example of new prohibition, the directive will forbid vague environmental claims, such as green or environmentally friendly. If traders cannot demonstrate excellent environmental performance. So it means that those of you who are genuinely the most sustainable, you really will be able to stand out and see your green investment and efforts rewarded. With regard to early obsolescence, also here a few additional bans, false claim on durability, for example, or reparability. So for example, claiming that a machine will last for 5 years, while under normal condition of use, it's only lasts for 3. And so really these rules aim to ensure a fairer competition between traders. In terms of timing, so the text entered into force at the end of March. So now member states have 24 months to transpose the directive, which will enter into application only 6 months later. So for you as businesses, you are expected to comply as of the end of September 2026. Very briefly now as well, on the directive on...
Yeah, if you can keep it up so we can move to the next question, please. Yeah.
Sure. So then very briefly on the common rules on the right to repair, like the aim is really to promote and facilitate repair in the after-sale context. And so this will prolong the use phase of products, contributing, of course, to more circularity and less waste. And here the text will be soon published, and member states will have 24 months to transpose it before it come into application. So here again, the aim, facilitate, promoting, making sure repair are attractive and are available to consumer. But I will leave it here, just maybe by a conclusion that of course it will be super important to have this directive transposed, implemented and enforced to ensure a level playing field in the single market.
Thank you very much, Benedicta. Just to remind everyone that we're going to have some time for questions and answers. So we're going to be kicking off our Q&A shortly. So please use the Q&A function to add any questions, please, not on the chat and not by raising the hand. Just use the Q&A function in Zoom. Maybe a first question from my side, because something that we've already discussed is a lot of the requirements that companies will need to fulfill. We've even discussed that this legislation will also bring some bans, but I wanted to hear from you, which tools do these respective pieces of legislation or generally this framework have to incentivize companies in the green transition? So what are the things that will encourage and will support companies in this journey? Maybe Emmanuelle can go first, and then Benedict.
Well, I think that what sells is very much related to the green credentials of a product, but also of the organization. So businesses clearly have an interest in promoting green features, but the issue is also to apply, as I was saying before, the right level of substantiation for that. So currently, the green claims is a proposal. It's not yet a finalized directive. The European Parliament has already voted its first reading. The Council is also looking at it. And in the discussions, for example, we tackle the claims which are related to climate, because obviously if you can claim that your products or your organization is climate neutral, for example, this sells well, because as Agustin said, people are interested in acting for the environment and against climate change. So in that context, we had many discussions. The Parliament and the Council decided already to ban climate neutrality claims on products when they use offsets. But we also have a lot of discussions now on what can be claimed in terms of the climate neutrality of a company itself. So not the products, but the company. So there you can expect also, probably stricter rules. And so companies to be able to market their products or beneficial will have to comply with these requirements. Again, it's always an approach of a level playing field. What we're also trying to do, and it's true also for what Benedict has been also doing, is to reinforce the robust eco-labeling schemes and to avoid proliferation of eco-labels which are not solid at all. So this is another area where we will try really to promote the solid labels and get rid of the ones who are undermining trust.
Because then maybe related to that, I wanted to ask a follow-up question to Benedicta as well, because you talked about demonstrating environmental excellence. And I'd be keen to hear from you how then can such environmental excellence be demonstrated so that no vague green claim can be made unless such an excellence is proven. So how can this be done in practice?
For sure, thanks a lot for the question. So in this, it's one specific prohibition that bans indeed vague claims. So just like I'm sustainable, I am green. What we want is that when you do a claim, you do a precise claim so that it's really understandable for consumer. But we still allow this vague claim, such as green and sustainable or environmental friendly, I would say, when they are truly based on excellent environmental performance, saying that they are really at the top class, I would say, and this is described precisely in the directive. You could base it on the EU Ecolabel, on Type 1 Ecolabel, on, for example, for energy performance, you can relate like a top, say that you are top in energy if you are in the class A, so the best class, for example. So there are a few there are strict conditions for that to make sure that there is indeed a level playing field, and the ones that are truly the most sustainable then can stand out and really being rewarded to be best in class. Maybe just to add also on regarding opportunities for businesses, and I wanted to come back to some facts and figure of our impact assessment because I think they are really telling. So we have seen from our study that 86% of consumers want better information on durability and 80% want better information on reparability. And the study confirmed that actually this information is highly effective because consumers, once they have this information, they are 2 to 3 times more likely to choose the most durable and the most reparable products. So we see like they will really encourage company to, for example, use this new label or communicate to consumer about the reparability and how easy it is to repair the product, because we do believe that it will give to you really a competitive advantage.
Great, thank you very much, Benedicta. And then Emmanuelle, if you could also then talk in more detail, because you mentioned before the EU Ecolabel. What can you tell us more about that, and why should companies then aim to apply for it?
Yeah, with pleasure. So the EU Ecolabel has been developed about 30 years ago, and this is the best in class label of the European Union, and it rewards almost 25 types of products. So if today there are companies active in the field of cosmetics, detergents, paints, paper, for example, they can look for the information in their member states because it's an EU-wide program, see how they can comply with the scheme and the level of requirements. And when they do, then they are authorized to brand their products with the EU logo, which has flowers and all the stars around it. So this is really a very powerful way to promote your best-in-class products. And once you have done this, you belong to the top category. So you're also entitled to make these generic claims that Benedict referred to earlier. And there would be no additional criteria to meet under the green claim. So it's a very practical tool and successful tool to market your product. I think that today we have 95,000 products which have the EU Ecolabel, and there is a very high level of trust and awareness of consumers. We carried out surveys, polls across the European Union, and almost 40% of EU citizens surveyed in all the member states recognize this level of excellence. So it's really worth investing in getting the EU Ecolabel logo.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, Emmanuelle, thank you very much. Since we have a little time for questions, and we have many already coming to us, I would like to start by addressing some of the questions. There is one on the Green Claims Directive. Is there already an assessment method defined? And if not, when can we expect that for green claims, and a process for independent confirmation? So which organization, how to order such a confirmation, the costs, how does that work in practice for businesses?
Exactly. So there is not one single method, scientific method, which is prescribed. We have one developed by the European Union called the EU Environmental Footprint methods. But so this one can be used, but it's not the only one. What matters is that there is scientific evidence behind a claim, and that when a company is selling, a green product, it has a life cycle approach in mind. So, like this, you avoid, making a claim on one aspect, whereas, on the other aspect, you have a lot of detrimental impacts. So it's very important to have the life cycle approach so that we know where the impacts are, from the extraction of materials to the waste, but also to have a good understanding of the type of environmental impact, for example, climate change, the toxicity to water, ozone depletion, or land use. So it's very, very important that the claims which is made matters and is adequately justified with science. But no, not only one method, there can be different ones. Then who would be checking these claims made by companies? It would be a third-party certifier that would be accredited in the member states of the European Union. So, I could not start validating a claim made by a company if I have not received an accreditation by Belgium, for example. So we need really a robust system of verification ex ante before the claim is made, and this will guarantee a level playing field that we are missing currently within the European Union.
Thank you, Emmanuelle. We have another question that from a business perspective, and I think Benedicta will be better positioned to answer to it. What is the difference in practice between empowering consumers and the Green Claims Directive. They all seem to be very closely connected, but in difference, what does each other of them mean, and what's the difference between them?
No, it's a very good question. I would say that empowering consumer for the green transition is amending the really general consumer law, the Unfair Commercial Practice Directive, and it's really general principle that, of course, consumers should not be misled. So we set like really general rules of communication towards consumer that they should not be misled, and we include new specific ban related to greenwashing, and that really aims to address the most common and maybe problematic practice we see in the market. And so I would say that's the general basis. And of course, the Green Claims Directive then will set more specific rule and will complement this just general principle by setting requirement on the substantiation, also some further communication requirement, and also will require this ex-ante verification. So they are really complementary framework.
Mm-hmm. And perhaps a follow-up question in this topic, is there a plan to provide guidance to companies on the empowering consumers? For example, the attendee says how to identify if something could be considered a sustainability level as per the empowering consumers, or if providing further specifications through QR codes would be permissible. So which kind of guidelines can then be, this guidance can be provided when it comes to complying with these goals?
No, sure. So first, we are amending a general Unfair Commercial Practice Directive. There is already guidance, and so general principle that can apply to the entire UCPD, of course, applies to this new addition. We do our planning in the future to amend, as we have done regularly. We amend this existing guidance. We have done it in 2021. Probably we will wait, of course, for application of the law in a few years also of application before updating officially this guidance. But this will certainly be done.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And we have a few questions in terms of the Green Claims Directive. I'll try to see how many I can pick up, but maybe a first one is, are durability and reparability criteria going to become mandatory for products manufactured by companies? I think Emmanuelle might be better positioned to answer this one.
Yes, so this is in the context of the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. So this is where we can place mandatory requirements on how products are designed, while the Green Claims does not address, the type of product requirements you need to apply. So, for example, you could have, we have this also already on washing machines. I'm going back to my old example, where we have requirements that the spare parts needs to be available from the manufacturer for a period of 10 years. And we have additional requirements so that we can make sure that a product can be repaired not only by one company, but by more repairers. So that could be, they exist already for certain product groups, but durability and repairability requirements could also be set on other product groups in the future. I don't know, textiles, maybe this could be, some of the parameters to define a sustainable textile under the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And maybe I would combine two questions in one, because a few attendants are asking about obligations that on the one hand, online marketplaces and retailers in general are going to have when selling products and monitor the claims of the products they sell. So will they have any specific obligations that they will need to follow?
I think that the main obligation on the green claims is really based on the company that is generating the claim. Mm-hmm. So the obligation will be there. There will be a need to have this ex-ante verification. and the company will get a certificate. And the certificate can be accessible, for example, through a QR code. So, if they're sold in an online marketplace or if they're sold in shops, then the QR code remains with the product and the certificate as well. So again, the obligation is really on the company that is generating the claim.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Then, so this is all the time that we have for this first panel discussion. But thank you very much to Emmanuelle and Benedict. We got so many questions from the audience, so I understand that there's a very strong business interest in all the legislation ahead and how to comply with it. So I'm sure that this is going to keep you very busy in the months to come and in the lead up to the transposition and the implementation of this vast legislation, important legislation coming ahead. So thank you very much to both Emmanuelle and Benedict for having joined us in this first panel discussion.
No, thank you very much. If I may, I just want to mention that we are organizing an information session for stakeholders. So for the one who are interested, it will probably be at the end of June. But we'll organize an information session with like a detailed description of the empowering consumer for the Green Transition Directive for the one interested.
Excellent. So for the many of you that are going to be interested, I would say that to stay tuned to DigiJust's website on the exact date of the webinar and the information session, and you're probably going to be able to address many of these questions that we didn't have time today. So thank you very much once again. And now we move to the second one of our panel discussions, in which we're going to be zooming in on how different businesses are already applying many of the instruments we've discussed about, so from the EU Ecolabel to other certification claims, and also bringing in the consumer perspective. So I'm delighted to be welcoming, first of all, the co-founder at Danish apparel brand Neutral, Christina Larsen. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me today.
Then next up with us is the Advisor for Sustainability and Environment at Eurocommerce, Nick Dornhin. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. Good afternoon, everyone.
And also with us is the sustainability expert at the Austrian Association for Consumer Information, Raphael Fink. Welcome, Raphael.
Good afternoon, everybody.
All right, so let's start with some brief introduction from each one of you. I would like to start with you, Christina. If you could start telling us about Neutral and its sustainability strategy, how it has embedded different sustainability instruments and strategies to its own journey. I believe you have a short presentation for us as well.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Let me just start with a short introduction of who Neutral is. We are a medium-sized company based in Copenhagen. We are 100% family-owned. We are on the B2B market, where we offer a broad range of certified garments like t-shirts, sweatshirts, tote bags, and so on. And being at the B2B market means that our end customers are very diverse, and it's everything from private companies, NGOs, political parties, and so on. And I'm quite sure that for some of the hopeful for the coming EP election, they will wear Neutral when they go out the streets. Our sales channels are typically through promotional companies, distributors, and textile printers. From there, our products will be customized with logo or some print. So to make it very simple, imagine a white t-shirt. You can get it anywhere, and that is the market for Neutral. We've been in the textile industry for more than 30 years, but 20 years ago, we gave ourselves a challenge. And that challenge was, how can we make the most sustainable clothing possible at scale? And next slide will show you the best solution we have been able to find. At a quick, you can see there is a lot of different standards and certificates, and that is not because we want to confuse our customers, but that's because each have their strength and each have their weaknesses. So by combining, we make sure that the strictest criteria are met in every part of our value chain. So let me give you a quick walkthrough. If we start with the cotton farmers, we have chosen to only go by organic cotton. By doing so, we make sure that it's not just that we want to avoid insecticide, pesticides, and so on. It's also because we want to protect biodiversity, groundwater, surface water, and also the health of farmers. So that's why we have chosen the GOTS standard, which is also a type class 1 certification. Next, we have realized that the farmers we are working with is cooperative and small-scale farmers. And there, the issue is also poverty. So to make sure that they get a fair price for their products, but also that we develop the communities, we have chosen that all our products must be fair trade certified. When we go further on, you can see, just in my slide here, we have the EU Ecolabel. And in part 1, we have a great introduction to it. But for us, it's very important that the focus area here is the chemistry, is the energy use. It's built on an LCA, and it is, as we have heard, class 1 at the European market. Next is the SA 8000, and that's more for the social compliance at the factory facilities, and that's a higher standard within working condition, and that is also a type 1 or class 1 certification. And then at the end, it's Ecotex. So make it simple. Certificates works like traffic rules for business conducts abroad. It makes the complex simple by saying what's okay and not okay. And certificates bring back accountability and transparency in the textile industry, especially for the customer. So that is the neutral solution.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Christina, for such a detailed explanation on the different labels and the neutral zone sustainable solution. I'm sure that it has already inspired many of our attendants. I have a few follow-up questions for you, but I would first like to hear from our other panelists. I would like to bring in Raphael, and if you could tell us a little bit about the Austrian Association for Consumer Information, and in particularly, how is it looking into greenwashing? You have a project called the Greenwashing Fact Check. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'll gladly do it. So my name is Raphael Finke, and I'm working for the Austrian Consumer Organization, which is on the one hand, for more than 30 years now, the official certification body for the Austrian as well as for the European Ecolabel. And on the other hand, as the name says, we are a consumer organization. We are also part of BEUC. And what is a consumer organization doing? We're doing tests, we are doing consumer research, we are advising consumers when they face typical consumer problems, and we take legal action. And a bit more than 3 years ago, we said, okay, we noticed that there are a lot of vague, a lot of misleading claims out there, and we need to do something against this. And so we launched a project, and I'm the project leader, 3 years ago on World Consumer Days in the middle of March, called VKI, which is the abbreviation for Austrian Consumer Association. So the VKI greenwashing check. And what we do is we said, okay, we will give consumers out there the possibility to report cases of possible greenwashing to us via a web form, very easy. So it takes you 2 to 3 minutes to report possible cases of greenwashing to us. And we will do a fact check on a monthly basis. So we will pick a case, do a fact check, confront the company with several questions, and we will publish their answers, and we also take into account their answers when it comes to the conclusion, and then we will publish each month such a fact check. And the two main objectives of this project were, on the one hand, putting pressure on companies, because the Austrian Consumer Association is a very well-known consumer organization, NGO in Austria, which has a very high reputation. And on the other hand, we want to draw the public attention and also the attention of specified public, so other companies, other stakeholders, to the topic of greenwashing. And so we have published over 30 of these fact checks. You can read them for free, it's in German. And what we also do is, and this is one of the best things of the project, is I said we can take legal actions. So when we think that a case is greenwashing and there may be a legal component to it, we will go to the court. And so we achieved already 2 legally binding verdicts in the last year, one to one of the biggest Austrian brewing company that belongs to Heineken, and Austrian Airlines, so a major airline company. It's a daughter of Lufthansa. And because both of them advertise their products with carbon neutral claims, and we achieved 2 legally binding verdicts that were very widely perceived by the public. And so we see that companies in Austria already know, hey, please take a look on your claims, because there is a consumer organization that is taking a close look into it and is also suing you. And last thing I want to say is, I said we give consumers the opportunity to report possible cases of greenwashing. And out of all the reports that were sent to us, it's a bit at around 200, so a bit more than one per week. And I'm happy about it, because we don't have the resources to do more than one fact check amount. I can say that half of the cases concern the generic and the vague, the very unclear claims like green, eco-friendly, sustainable. And 25% relate to the carbon neutral claims, so climate positive, CO2 neutral. So we warmly welcome what is going on a regulatory basis, because it's very important, for example, to ban carbon neutral claims that are based purely on offsetting of products.
Thank you very much, Rafael. I think it's been really interesting to understand the effectiveness that these different initiatives have had in driving change, really. And we'll look into the questions in more detail and the policies that you've already mentioned and we've already discussed afterwards, and how consumers perceive it. Before that, I would like to hear from Nick, representing Eurocommerce, and the opportunities that all this new puzzle of legislation on sustainable products and consumption opens for businesses. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Nick, and I'm representing here Eurocommerce. We are European Business Association representing retailers and wholesalers. So our members are basically the link between the producers and the consumers, or end consumers in the case of wholesalers, for example, that, for example, deliver products to hotels and restaurants. And basically, our perspective, our situation is that we are saying we as a sector, and also many other sectors, are really undergoing currently a transformation. We call it the triple transformation, because it's about skills, it's about digitalization, but it's also about sustainability. And we think that really, if done right, new rules and regulation can really support this transformation, because we see really that there is a growing demand for sustainable products from the consumers. I think BEUC also at the introduction mentioned their own study they conducted. And we're seeing this growing trend, but it's not only coming from consumers, it's also coming from your own business partners, from the regulatory side. So there is a need, growing demand, and a need to react to that. And maybe to talk about the different pieces of legislation, as I mentioned, I think we see several opportunities. Maybe to start with right to repair. I think what we like there in the agreed legislation is that, for example, member states should also provide and establish financial incentives for repair, because we had some members that really made really good experiences with giving consumers some incentive to seek and try out repair in order to really to foster really a repair ecosystem. Linked to this is the whole issue of eco-design, because we had, for example, members who are offering some kind of repair maintenance service. But for example, for smartphones, so far it was hard to get spare parts and repair information. So it's really good when the different eco-design delegated acts, for example, provide this access to spare parts or to repair information, because then you can offer this to the consumer and have this opportunity to offer this service. Then maybe speaking about the new and upcoming eco-design for sustainable products regulation, I think we are already used to this approach when it comes to the energy-related products, so your TVs, refrigerators, washing machines, and extending the successful approach really also to new product groups like textiles that were already mentioned is a good point also for businesses, because you get clarity and certainty. Because I think it's better to have some really product-specific rules and obligations and requirements than having maybe some very general requirements. And I think we saw this in some of the questions that were also asked by the audience. If you have then something like empowering consumers and green claims, which is quite broad, then you have a lot of questions. How does it apply? What's about specific cases? So this helps. What also is very good in the ESPR is the digital product passport, because we see this growing trend within the supply chain that more information needs to be submitted. So this is really an opportunity to modernize how product information is exchanged, that we agree on common standards, that we provide this information also to the consumer. Maybe in the long term, also consumers can then use digital product passports to compare information. So this is really very good, because there's this growing trend and need to have more traceability and transparency in supply chains. And maybe a last point then on green claims. I mean, this is not a finalized legislation, still Parliament and the member states need to agree on the final text. But there it's also clear for us that the consumers should be able to rely really on proper and verified on these claims, and that it firstly really protects the consumer if there are clear rules, but also to ensure fair competition. It was also already mentioned that there are some companies out there that put some misleading claims out there, and in order to protect the companies that really do their work and substantiate their claims, it's good if there are these rules. And as I said, as this link between producers and also consumers, I mean, we are engaging daily with consumers. So to properly engage, we really would like to have some clear, transparent, reliable, accurate claims and clear rules that help us. And so maybe to conclude, we see there is an opportunity for harmonization, for hopefully the right guidance, as it was mentioned by the Commission also earlier, that we all know what to do and then can move forward.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Nick. I have many questions and many topics that I want to pick up from everything that you've all said, but maybe I'd like to start and bring back in Christina, because we've seen all the labels that that Neutral has obtained. I wanted to zoom in on the question of the EU Ecolabel specifically, since we also discussed in the previous webinar. I'd be curious to hear from you, first of all, why did you choose it? What has your experience been so far? And for business who would be interested in applying, why should they and how should they prepare for it? Is it a very difficult process to obtain? What can you tell us about this journey to being certified?
Oh, Anna, that was a lot of questions. First and foremost, we actually believe that if you have standards that goes across sectors, that is very helpful for the consumers. I, as a consumer, when I go out shop, I will definitely look for some labeling which can guide my purchasing behavior to the most sustainable products. So if I go, for example, for washing powder, I don't know anything about washing powder, but if I look for the EU Ecolabel, then I know for sure that some specialists have gone through it, and that is one of the most environmental friendly products on the market. So actually it's quite helpful. The more product and product categories we have on the market, it's much more easy for the consumer to have a sustainable or environmental friendly buying behavior. So that's for one reason. And if you ask me if I would like a European mark for organic products going across food and clothing and everything, I would definitely say yes, because at the moment there is a lot of national marks for the organic content. So that is one of the main reasons. Again, we have been searching, we have identified in every part of our supply chain, we actually try to identify the highest risk area. And when it came to the whole production chain from spinning, knitting, dyeing, and sewing, it was, of course, the chemistry used that was of great concern for us. It was the water usage, and it was the energy consumption. And then we look into different standards, and we found that the EU Ecolabel had the strictest criteria, and hence, because of the philosophy behind neutral, that was obvious for us to go for this standard.
Great, thank you very much, Christina. And then maybe first of all, because I've forgotten to remind before that we're also going to have a little time for questions from the audience. So if you have questions for our panelists, please get them on the Q&A section. If you would indicate to which panelist you're addressing the question to, that would be really great. And now I have a question for Raphael. And because we've heard before from Agustin that there's a high number of consumers that, first of all, want to make more sustainable choices, and that they look for more environmental information. I'd be keen for you to hear from you if you think that in the Austrian case it's the same, and how do you think then that this piece of legislation that we've been discussing are going to nudge consumers into more sustainable choices and encourage them to make more sustainable choices? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, what I can tell you about this are two things, I would say. On the one hand, we know that there is an increasing share of people for which it is important to buy sustainably. We know this because we have annual surveys that are led by the Austrian Federal Ministry for the Austrian Ecolabel, and so we know that this is a very important topic for rather young people, rather for women, rather for people with a higher income. And although we notice that the amount of people, or the share of people that want to buy sustainable has a bit dropped due to the inflation crisis, we see that it is rising again. So this is a very important topic. I would say this is a mega trend. And when you go to a supermarket, and that I believe it's not only in Austria, I would say it's in most of the European countries, it is kind of a disgrace, because you see yourself confronted with a lot of labels where you don't know, is it trustworthy? What is it about? Is the certification reliable? You see yourself confronted with a lot of generic claims that claim everything to be very associative claims, where it seems very, very nice, but you don't know what is behind this. So I think that the upcoming legislation is a very important thing. I already mentioned the thing about the carbon neutral claims on products that are banned if they rely on compensation, a very, very important thing, because, for example, carbon neutral meat products won't be in the supermarkets anymore. A very important thing for consumers, because we also know from other surveys done by several universities, for example, that carbon neutral claims are very, very important for consumers. It's very important because they know there is something going on out there named climate crisis, and they want to actively contribute to do something against this, and so they buy climate neutral products, and they are completely misled. So I think it's very important that the upcoming legislation is banning certain claims, also making it way more difficult to have generic claims on your product. So you need to show that you are in the field of environmental excellence if you want to claim your product as eco-friendly, sustainable, green, whatever. And on the other hand, I think that the Green Claims Directive will yes, it is kind of a burden for companies, and it will be difficult, and a lot of things are still going on, and we don't know, and we don't yet know what will be the concrete thing that is to come, but we know that it will be a game changer, because it is, I think it's totally okay if you demand from companies that advertise the products or themselves as and do green claims to ask them to deliver something, to substantialize the claims. And so it will make it easier for consumers to consume sustainably, because the claims will be way more reliable.
Thank you, Rafael. And then from a consumer, from a retail and wholesale perspective, maybe Nick, because consumers want to make sustainable choices and they want to put their money where their mouth is, but there has to be a business case for sustainable products. So how do you think this legislation we've been discussing creates such a business case? Which opportunities does it open then?
Yes. I think, as already mentioned, there is this business case, and I think the many claims that are out there are also showing that there is a demand for it. I think what's our perspective is really that businesses are coming really for legal certainty, because you want to react to this demand, you want to satisfy this demand, but only if you have these clear rules and the legal certainty that what you're doing is right, then you can do this. And then I think we can get into in like a positive loop, or counteract like a claim suspicion that people maybe don't believe or don't act on the information they receive because they are not sure if it's a good claim. And if we come to a point where you have valid, reliable claims, then maybe it's also easier to actually communicate and engage and maybe show, hey, this is a great new product, and it's not only claiming to do something, but it actually has this positive impact. I think it's one side, and I think also from the business side, as we are not producers, it also helps if there are legally mandatory information, for example, that's need to provide it from producers, because as we are not the ones actually manufacturing the products, you also rely on getting the right information in order then to be able to transfer them to the consumers. So having there also clear rules helps. And I think it helps the whole supply chain and the whole wider industrial ecosystem, because I think we are also talking, of course, to the suppliers, and the more clarity you have, the easier it is then to work together to, in the end, have a product that you can sell to the consumer. But if everyone has their own ideas, then it's a little bit more complicated.
Thank you, Nick. Now, Christina, since we've been discussing about the different certifications that the Neutral is engaged in, I think it would be great to hear from you, since you mainly work with other business or in this B2B sector. Could you tell us also how have your customers then reacted to the certifications that Neutral has achieved? Which impact has it had also in your B2B relationships? What can you tell us about that?
Let me start with saying that it has been much more easy the last 5 years. I don't know if you can imagine 15 years ago when we said, okay, this is an organic t-shirt, and people looked at us and say, do you think I should eat it? But that was kind of the reaction at that time. Unfortunately, I must say, from a personal perspective, more and more people are, of course, aware of climate change and biodiversity crisis and so on. And that's because during the last just 10 years, these issues cannot longer be ignored, right? But our concern right now is that, and which should actually not affect us, but it does, is the new CSRD, and especially the new regulation regarding ESGs. And when we go further down, the measurement of the emissions in scope 3. Because this is about figures and not necessarily about facts. But the drop-down effect has been quite huge. And we get, I don't know how many questionnaires all the time, and we are asked, can you please advise what is your emissions in scope 3? You can measure the emissions in different ways. The easiest way is to use what is called the spend method. That is actually, you see how much money do you spend, what is your cost, and then you go into some databases and whether you can calculate on behalf of secondary data, and then you can calculate what is actually the emission per kilogram. So now you saw our value chain. What we have actually done, we have voluntarily added a lot of cost to our products to make it as sustainable as possible. If we use the spend method, we will come up in a much worse shape than very, very cheap t-shirts where the prices has been pressured, and perhaps also the people involved in the supply chain. So that is actually a great concern for us. And we see in the B2B market that a lot of companies, or some companies, are now backtracking of the sustainable work they're doing. Some are now going back, so they go from organic cotton to conventional cotton. Some are canceling the fair trade and so on. And this is a really bad development when it comes to sustainability.
Thank you very much, Christina. Sorry, I was trying to get to mute again. Then maybe as a follow-up question, first of all, for Nick, I'd be curious to hear how have Eurocommerce members reacted to the legislation discussed, and in particular, have you noticed a higher interest in certifications such as the EU Ecolabel or equivalent robust eco-labels? It seems now clear that it's going to help them comply with rules around green claims and eco-design. So do you notice perhaps more interest in understanding how these are working in practice?
Yes, definitely. Especially, for example, on the eco-label, I think what we saw in the past years, and where we also are very glad that the Commission was also able to engage, was, for example, on providing or updating and keeping up to date the electronic catalog, so the online database about which products have the EU Ecolabel certification, because we saw from many retailers that they're saying, okay, we want to present this maybe on the website, but if you do need to do this manually, it's really, really complicated. And this is something that not only the Commission does, but also the member states, because they are awarding the Ecolabel certification. So they also need to talk then to the companies and tell them you need to keep this up to date, because then it's also easier for you to be found. I think that's what we saw, but in general, also as, for example, green claims is not finalized yet, we have also a lot of questions. And I think it's really typical also what I saw in the chat. All these questions, is this also applying, for example, to food? No, because the green claims proposal also foresees some exemptions, or that there's a lex specialis, a special legislation that would apply if we ever have a future sustainable food legislation, for example. There are certain other exemptions, for example, for the EU Ecolabel or other EU basically regulated schemes. But I think in general there is still this need for guidance. So it was really I was really happy to hear also, for example, from the speaker from DG Just, that there will be further information session, because I think that's really important, not only for our members, but I think in general for businesses, and especially for the SMEs that might not following closely the process and might hear now about this upcoming legislation. That there is simply the need to raise awareness and to communicate, and therefore it's really good also that we have, for example, this event today to bring different people together, and not only us Brussels-based people that know a little bit more already about the legislation.
Thank you. And then, Raphael, from the perspective of an organization involved in the Ecolabel, in the EU and Austrian Ecolabel, how do you reflect on all this new legislation that has been agreed from this perspective? And have you also seen higher interest from companies in certification and in the label lately?
Yes, we see a constant rise in the certification, especially also for the Austrian Ecolabel, but as well as for the European Ecolabel. And for sure, the Austrian Ministry as label scheme owner and Austrian Consumer Association as certification body, we expect that also the certifications will rise, especially when the Empowering Consumers Directive will enter into force, because the certification with credible labels like the European Ecolabel, the German Blue Angel, the Nordic Swan, or the Austrian Ecolabel will give these companies the opportunity to promote their certified products, for example, as sustainable, as eco-friendly. So it is a great USP for companies. And so I think, yeah, certification is very important, and it's a very good thing of the upcoming legislation that is also trying to make it easier for consumers to differentiate between credible labels, because it tries to get rid of the non-credible labels. And so, yeah, we certainly think that there will a rise in the certification. And what we also see is that a lot of our license holders are very interested in the upcoming regulation. We do webinars from time to time, and there's always a great interest in the upcoming legislation, because they want to know, okay, what is going on? What can I expect when it comes to the Empowering Consumers or the Green Claims Directive?
Thank you, Raphael. Just to remind again that we still have a little time to get questions from you in the audience. So please use the Q&A function for that. And please say also to which panelists specifically you would like to address the question to. I would like then to maybe open for a question to all of you, which is, in practice, how would you recommend companies in order to prepare to comply with the upcoming legislation and in support of their green transitions? What are your recommendations for businesses? What are some tips that you would give them? Maybe starting with you, Christina.
May I go? Oh, sorry.
No, please, Raphael.
All right, you can go first, Raphael.
Sorry,
sure.
I didn't want to interrupt. Okay, but I can go ahead. What I always recommend companies is to say, okay, check your claims, be very aware of generic claims, and take a close look on your carbon neutral claims, because they are very important for consumers. They are often very misleading, and so they are very high interested. So I recommend license holders, for example, other companies, be as transparent as possible, rather opt in for specific than generic claims, and be very, very careful with carbon neutral claims.
Thank you very much, Raphael. Then who would like to go next? Should I pick someone? I think Christina, you want to go next?
First and foremost, you need to have some. It's very difficult to be an SME at the moment and to keep up with all the current and coming legislation. So it's very important that you are in some kind of a network where you can be updated on the latest, for example. Of course, I would recommend you to go for international standard, especially for the EU Ecolabel, because then you kind of deposit the transparency and the expert knowledge to a unity who knows a lot about the issue, which you as an SME might not have. So that is one thing. And then again, I will like to aim focus at the now we've talked about greenwashing and about don't say you are carbon neutral, but we see from the big ones and that the facts and figures, and that is actually also about emissions. We are asked now, and that is many people think that the emission is comparable between brands or products, but it is not very transparent how those figures are calculated. And I think that might be a problem in on the consumer market as well, because if I write that one t-shirt has some emission and my competitor make another calculation and it states that the emission connected to this t-shirt is another, then I would compare those two and I will buy the t-shirt with the least impact. But this is not necessarily the right t-shirt, because there's no control in how you're calculating things. So I actually fear that that could be the next kind of greenwashing thing.
Thank you very much, Christina.
And I would like to pass that to Raphael, actually.
Another greenwashing tactic too.
Yeah, I can. What I want to say is there's a very good publication from an NGO called Planet Tracker, and it's called the Greenwashing Hydra. You will find it. And the Hydra is the mythological entity. You cut off one head and two heads come up. So I'm sure that the upcoming legislation will make it more difficult for companies to do greenwashing, but greenwashing will always be a topic because you can't regulate everything. But I think it will be more difficult, but there will be new strategies of greenwashing. I'm absolutely sure, because our marketing departments are very creative, companies are very creative, but it is very important to say, last thing here, most of the companies, in my experience, don't do greenwashing on purpose. They do it because they don't know better. And this is very important to know. So I think it's very important to have events like these where companies get the information they need, or also the company, or also the event Benedict told us about. I think it's very important to inform companies how you can do it better.
No, I would, yeah, I totally agree. Perhaps greenwashing wasn't the right word, but it was kind of, it's let's say you're going to fly to Copenhagen. You're in good time, and you buy your ticket 6 months ahead, and you pay 100 euros. Then the next flight is coming. You have to go tomorrow, and then you pay 300 euro to Copenhagen. It's the same distance, and logically it will be the same emissions, right? But if you use the spend method, you will have 3 times as high emissions, because it's based on price. So, and that is quite legal, but it would be misleading, right? That the cheapest product get the lowest calculated emissions compared to high-priced products.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, it boils down to what Raphael also mentioned before, to be sure that you verify,
so it's more like
substantiate your claims.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Christina. And now, Nick, some final recommendation to all the businesses listening in today on how to prepare for all these pieces of legislation.
I think I can just echo what also Raphael said, that you look at your claims, and I know that our members are already doing it, that you look at what's upcoming with the legislation, that you're open, and that you go exactly to, maybe like in the Austrian case, events or webinars that are organized there, or the commission events. I know, for example, on ESPR, there was one, Digital Product Passport, there's something upcoming. So I think that's really important. In general, I believe also the whole issue of cooperation and collaboration is important, to get together, to talk to your peers, to talk to your authorities, because as it was mentioned, probably most of the claims are not done because somebody wants to mislead you or doesn't want to comply, but because they don't know better. So then we need to go to the authorities and to engage in the dialogue. But also I think that's the the role of the member states and of the Commission to provide also clarity, provide clear guidance, to support then also the businesses in implementing the rules, because it's not so easy as it seems, as we saw in some of the that were raised.
I really like this as a final message of our panel discussion. Indeed, cooperation and talking to each other and also learn from one another. So I'm afraid we need to wrap up here, but thank you very much to Christina, to Nick, and to Raphael for joining us and sharing insight both from the industry, the retail, and the consumer perspective. So thank you very much to all of you for this great discussion. I'm sure that we're going to have many more opportunities to continue discussing that and sharing information as we just said. And then to conclude this webinar today and to share some reflections from this past two discussions, I'm delighted to be welcoming the Director for Climate and Circular Economy at the European Environmental Bureau, Stefan Arditi. Welcome.
Hello, everyone, and I hope you hear me well. Thank you very much to Anna and to all the speakers and to the participants. I have a few minutes. I will not pretend I can summarize what has been done, but if I have to take some key message from the panel one, from the Commission, is that really what they try to do through the product policy and the empowering consumer file is really creating a level playing field and avoiding, or even prohibiting vague claims. And I think this can really answer the need for visibility, certainty, and I would say fair competition for the business. And we also hear that in fact, the Ecolabel could be reinforced in its signpost role because it's a very solid labeling scheme. And from the panel two, what we've heard is how we can use some certificate, that's what Christina mentioned, including Ecolabel, to really ensure the promotion of sustainable product. From Raphael, we heard that we can act positively both for business and the consumer by trying to interface, what the company propose to consumers through the fact-checking, but also through possibly dissuading non-compliance by legal action. And finally, by Nick from Eurocommerce, I think we hear that retail sector welcome this initiative because it can also make their life easy because they have the unique responsibility of bridging between manufacturers and consumer. If I had to take some more higher level message, I think that one thing we can be ensured is that when defining policy during the EU Green Deal, it is clear that the intention was to set supportive policy. And I think it's very important at this crucial time to stop opposing, sustainability and business case. What we hear today is that there is a business case for sustainability and sound policy can, in fact, also support sound business. Another key message that came back very often, I think it's good to create trust and confidence, both for consumer and for business. And I think this is absolutely crucial that we remind that, in fact, confidence for consumer can also go with confidence for business and vice versa. And then the third very important point we've heard is the idea of make the easy choice, I would say, the new normal. Make the sustainable choice the new normal. And here you can see that we've got the EEB release, a Pact for the Future recently. And one of the key points is exactly this one, how to make the sustainable choice the easy choice. And for me, this leads to two very crucial things. One, help SMEs to be aware of this policy, to identify what their best opportunities, and avoid or prevent them from unintentional greenwashing, because as it's been said, they don't do it on purpose. And the second thing, which is super important, is how we can try to align sustainability with price signal and convenience, because it's true that too often today, the freedom of consumer is not ensured because there are so many unsustainable choices compared to the sustainable choice. So for example, one idea could be, how can we make sure that eco-label products become more systematically the cheapest option, but also the most accessible option? And this is where we could collaborate together and continue together exploring how to make that a reality. Thank you very much again to all.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And I love what you mentioned, making the sustainable choice the easy choice. That's what we are here for, and that's what makes events like this so important. So thank you very much to the European Environmental Bureau and the European Consumer Organization for having us, and so that EEB and BEUC has brought us together, policymakers, industry, consumer organizations, to discuss that, to understand the impacts, to understand the many opportunities that this new framework of legislation brings to make sustainable choices the easier choices. So thank you very much once again to EEB, to BEUC. Thank you very much to the excellent speakers that have joined us in these two discussions today. And thank you very much to the many of you who have joined us this afternoon and have asked so many questions. We tried to address as many of them as possible, but we are definitely going to have more fora like this or information sessions organized by the EU institutions to continue this dialogue. So thank you very much once again from my side, and have a great rest of the day.